There are some video games which have become infamous for their failure. Daikatana's sales were disastrous, Sonic Boom sold less than the biggest pessimists anticipated, E.T. the Extraterrestrial was so inept it inspired urban legends, documentaries, and movies. Because these games sucked, their failure was warranted, but there are some occasions where a game can do everything right and still bomb. Although this does happen all the time with indie-developed projects, there are some beloved brands that couldn't break even, despite receiving positive reviews across the board. I'm Jess from WhatCulture, and here are 10 video games that didn't deserve to fail this bad. Number 10. CONKER'S Bad Fur Day. Back in Rare's heyday, which is when it existed, it seemed like British gaming developers could do no wrong. Due to their work on Banjo-Kazooie, Donkey Kong 64, and Banjo-Tooie, the company garnered a reputation for crafting adorable and colourful platformers. But when Rare released footage of 12 Tales Conker 64, the gaming community suddenly turned on the once beloved developers, accusing them of running out of ideas since they were churning out another kiddie platformer. Taking this criticism to heart, Rare revised the project, turning it into what we now know as CONKER'S Bad Fur Day. Although it maintained the cutesy aesthetic, it was now a hyper-violent title with swearing, excessive gore, tons of boobs, singing poop, insects who roll in poop, poop puzzles. Basically, there was a lot of poop. Although you have to commend Rare for going against the grain, it was the main reason why Conker failed. Because it was slapped with a mature rating, younger gamers couldn't legally get a copy. After its obscene content became more well known, some stores like KB Toys refused to sell it. Coupled with the fact that the game was released towards the end of the Nintendo 64 life cycle, it's no wonder that it sold poorly. Number 9. The TATAKE OUENDAN trilogy. Because the rhythm-based gameplay of Gitaroo Man inspired the creation of many music-themed titles like Rock Band, Guitar Hero, and Just Dance, it's a pity this PS2 classic barely made a penny. Fortunately, Nintendo were impressed with the creator Keiichi Yano and partnered with his company Innis to create a rhythm game called TATAKE OUENDAN, which translates into Yo Fight Cheer Squad. In this DS exclusive, you play as a group of cheerleaders who help people who are down on their luck. By tapping on specific spots on the touchscreen, you'll perform a dance routine to lift up their spirits. Even though it was set for a Japan-only release, it generated a lot of buzz, causing Westerners to frantically try to import it. Because of this, you'd expect OUENDAN to be a hit. On the contrary, it sold less than 1 million copies. But because the West showed interest, Innis gave its spiritual successor, Elite Beat Agents, a worldwide release. To the surprise of everyone, it sold just as badly as its predecessor. Not wanting to risk another dud, Innis released the next installment, OUENDAN 2, just in Japan. Despite the company's precautions, the threequel bombed. Unfortunately, even though every single entry in the trilogy received rave reviews, none of them sold more than 1 million copies. Number 8. The Last Express. Everyone loves point-and-click adventure games, and yet the genre never seems to catch a break. Despite the legacy and influence of The Secrets of Monkey Island, Grim Fandango, and Sam & Max, point-and-click titles are rarely associated with the words smash hit. But in 1997, it seemed like The Last Express was going to buck this trend. Prince of Persia creator Jordan Mechner did everything he could to ensure his work would be more than a run-of-the-mill adventure title. He invested 5 years and $6 million into the project, utilized rotoscope animation to create the eye-popping visuals, hired professional actors for every role, and had a team of writers put together a phenomenal 800-page script. As a little bonus, The Last Express was one of the first games to take place in real time, which really blew gamers away at the time. Because it was regarded as the best role-playing title of the year, it seemed like The Last Express was destined for glory. But since the marketing team quit just before its release, Mechner's work of art had zero promotion, causing it to sell 1/10 of what it needed to break even. Although The Last Express could have been Mechner's defining work, it forced his company to fold. This led to the cancellation of the PS1 port, crippling its potential sales even more. Number 7. Kingdom of AMALUR Reckoning. Kingdom of AMALUR Reckoning sounds like a game that's too good to be true, and it was in a way, but we'll get to that. It all started with baseball legend Curt Schilling taking out a loan of $75 million to set up his gaming company 38 Studios. After the money was secured, he got to work on Kingdom of AMALUR Reckoning, which was to be his company's first game and sadly the last. Even though one could accuse Schilling's shift in career to be a vanity project, the sports icon proved he was deadly serious in making the best game possible. To ensure the visuals were up to standard, he hired Image Comics founder and Spawn creator Todd McFarlane as the head artist. To ensure the game's lore was well written, he employed Star Wars novelist R.A. Salvatore for the job. After Schilling's team spent 6 years working on his pride and joy, AMALUR was finally released. But instead of receiving fanfare and a parade, all it got was okay-ish reviews. It earned $4.5 million, which is slightly less than what was needed to pay back the $75 million loan. Within 90 days of AMALUR's release, the company went bust and everyone was laid off. Though it didn't set the world on fire when it initially came out, the game is now seen as something of a cult classic. It's also been remastered in recent years, confusingly subtitled Re-Reckoning, allowing the action role player to receive the respect and recognition it should have got a decade ago. Number 6. Jazz Jackrabbit 2. Before Cliff Bleszinski was dropping jaws with his work on Unreal and Gears of War, he developed a 2D side-scroller called Jazz Jackrabbit. Set in a world where tortoises and hares have been at war for millennia, our titular bunny must bring peace to society. Due to decent reviews and adequate sales, Bleszinski got the thumbs up to work on a sequel. Sadly, Jazz Jackrabbit 2's sales weren't up to scratch, forcing the potential franchise to dissolve. Although it's disappointing when a solid title underperforms, it's nothing special. During the 1990s, there was a myriad of great platformers that didn't sell well. Thanks to Super Mario and Sonic, 2D side-scrollers like Block, Zool, Rocket Knight, Mr. Nuts, Radical Rex, and Chuck Rock were left in the dust. However, Jazz Jackrabbit 2 deserves a special mention because its failure was really unprecedented. 3 years after its release, the sequel sold a grand total of 29,000. To put it another way, it was selling 26 copies per day worldwide. Not 26,000, 26 in the entire world. Crash Bandicoot Warped, which came out at the same time, sold approximately 5 million copies in that same time frame. Regardless of quality or a lack of distribution, it's challenging to find any platformer that sold more abominably than Jazz Jackrabbit 2. Number 5. Earthbound. Earthbound was an immediate hit in Japan and is still seen as one of the very best games on the Super Nintendo. Despite the fact role players rarely did well in the Western world at the time, Nintendo hoped Earthbound's wacky humor, catchy music, and creative gameplay would break the mold. Sadly, being an RPG wasn't the only issue with the game doing well worldwide. Because of the overly cutesy graphics, you can understand why the average gamer in the West didn't gravitate towards Earthbound. Because it has a slow start, the few people who bothered to play it gave up long before the story got going. Also, instead of focusing on the sprawling story, quirky characters, or the innovative gameplay, the promos showed a hodgepodge of clips out of context, which befuddled potential customers. Not only does the advertisement give the false impression you automatically win battles just by walking into enemies, it also appears as if the main villain, Gygas the Cosmic Destroyer, is a bee. With Western viewers unable to make heads or tails of this commercial, you can't blame anyone who wasn't interested in purchasing Earthbound. Number 4. Mario Kart Live Home Circuit. As groundbreaking as Mario Kart 8 is, its successor really looked like it had the potential to be a total game changer. Mario Kart Live Home Circuit is a mixed reality racer which allows players to control real toy cars via a built-in radio set and the Joy-Cons. When the trailer released, many fans felt like the gaming industry would never be the same. Gamers were so blinded by Live Circuit's potential, they didn't consider the downside. Firstly, it cost $100 at least, and if you wanted to get more toy cars, then it was going to cost you even more than that. Also, rearranging items in your house to create a level is really inconvenient and a lot less fun than you'd think. Worst of all, the radio signal wasn't perfect, meaning the toy car would move irregularly, making racing quite the headache. Now, because this was brand new tech, we all expected there to be a few hiccups. As a result, many critics were generous. But after the technical issues became common knowledge, sales for Live Circuit plummeted. After nearly 2 years on the market, it sold only 1.27 million units. By comparison, Mario Kart 8 sold the same amount in only 4 days. Considering Mario Kart 8 accomplished this feat when it was only available on Nintendo's worst-selling console, That makes home circuit sales even more depressing. Number 3, Mad World. Though the Wii had plenty of games designed for adults like Manhunt 2 and No More Heroes, Mad World was particularly memorable because of its beautiful and gross art style. Similar to Sin City, this beat-em-up utilizes a monochromatic color scheme, which is regularly interrupted by torrents of blood as your character eviscerates enemies with his arm-mounted chainsaw. Being Platinum Games' debut game, it's no surprise Mad World has many commonalities with the company's defining series Bayonetta. Both franchises have over-the-top characters, unabashed gore, creative killing animations, and a catchy soundtrack. Because Bayonetta was a hit, you'd assume that Mad World would have had the same amount of success. Sadly, Mad World only sold 123,000 units in the US in the first 6 months, while Bayonetta sold nearly 10 times that in the same time frame. Because of its ludicrous violence, Mad World was banned in several countries, impairing its sales further. Although Platinum Games hoped the title would fare better in Japan, its sales there were almost non-existent. Despite the fact that positive reviews allowed a semi-sequel called Anarchy Reigns to be greenlit, it's still a shame to see how badly Mad World floundered. Number 2, The Artful Escape. The Artful Escape was a 2021 game by Johnny Galvatron, yes, that is his real name, where the player takes control of a guitarist called Francis Vendetti, who decides to embark on a journey of self-discovery. Although this sci-fi extravaganza was described as zany, that really doesn't even begin to do it justice. If Andy Warhol, Picasso, H.P. Lovecraft, Yellow Submarine, and a metric ton of LSD were merged together, the final result would be a kaleidoscopic mosaic called The Artful Escape. With its vibrant soundtrack, oozing visuals, awesome musical puzzles, and star-studded cast, Galvatron, still his real name, looked like he created a must-buy. But despite being nominated for a slew of awards, it seemed like gamers were too busy picking up Assassin's Creed Valhalla and Resident Evil Village to give this one a shot. But after it was released this year on the Switch, PS4, and the PS5, The Artful Escape looked like it would receive a resurgence of interest. But because the gaming industry has been oversaturated this year, The Artful Escape has swooped under the radar yet again. Although it got more notice this time around, it's insulting that more people aren't buying it, especially now it's available on every mainstream console. Number 1, Titanfall 2. Never in the history of video games has a game been more destined to fail than in the case of Titanfall 2. This underrated masterpiece exceeded its predecessor in every single way, and gamers just didn't give it a chance. So what went wrong? The short answer is everything. Because it was released right in between Battlefield 1 and Call of Duty Infinity War, Titanfall 2 got swallowed up by the more recognized first-person shooters. Speaking of which, Battlefield 1 and Titanfall were both published by EA. But since Battlefield was a bigger brand, the company invested all its marketing into the title, leaving them with pennies to spend on the promos for Titanfall 2. But it doesn't stop there, because the doomed sequel was unfortunately only available on Xbox One at first, cutting its potential audience in half. By the time Titanfall 2 got released on the PS4, owners had moved on, barely noticing the FPS was available. Suspecting disaster was imminent, Respawn Entertainment churned out a multiplayer beta of Titanfall 2, hoping it would build up hype. Sadly, it had the opposite effect, since the rushed-out demo had technical problems, awful maps, and an issue with spawning titans. Despite the fact that these problems were all fixed up by launch day, interest had kinda dried up. That's the end of our list, but do let me know down in that comment section if you can think of any other video games that absolutely did not deserve to fail as bad as they did. As always, I've been Jess from WhatCulture. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. If you like, you can come say hi to me on my Twitter account where I'm at Jess McDonald, but make sure you stay tuned to us here for plenty more great gaming lists.